Obviously, the comparisons from the very beginning were to Eddie Murphy and the Clumps.
For sure.
Have you ever thought of a Medea meets the Clumps? You know I love to come in here and give you some ideas.
Listen to me. I would love to work with Eddie. Eddie won't return my calls. So maybe one day we'll have a conversation.
I love my wife, and I'm not gay, and I'm not, and that's what's weird about this, to have your sexuality question and your moral fiber question and all that, when all I was doing was trying to be nice to somebody.
Tyler Perry, all of them. Tyler Perry fooled the whole black community. He went to churches. Went to a place where he could go where you could almost guarantee folk ain't gonna be thinking.
Eddie Murphy has always been known for speaking his mind. But what he's saying now is hitting a whole different level, one that's making people stop and question everything they thought they knew about some of the biggest names in entertainment and faith. In a conversation that's quickly picking up traction, Murphy is shedding light on something dark, something many have suspected but few have dared to speak on. He's calling out none other than Tyler Perry and Bishop T.D. Jakes, accusing them of being involved in something far more sinister than anything the public has been allowed to see. According to Eddie, Tyler Perry has been participating in disturbing and manipulative behavior for a long time, especially behind the scenes where the cameras don't roll and the real deals are made. He claims Perry has been using his influence in studios and his carefully cultivated public image as a cover while taking part in acts that involve the abuse and exploitation of vulnerable young boys, all for the sake of maintaining power, staying in the good graces of elite circles, and continuing to rise in a system that thrives on silence. What's even more chilling is what Murphy says about Bishop T.D. Jakes. He isn't just an uninvolved bystander or someone who turned a blind eye. According to Murphy, Jakes actively tried to suppress the truth. He used his reputation as a respected church leader and his platform to redirect attention, protect the people involved, and make sure nothing leaked out that could damage the carefully built facade. Murphy describes a pattern, one where people in power protect one another, where secrets are buried deep, and where those who try to speak up are either shut down or pushed out. He says, this isn't just a moral failure. It's a full-on cover-up that's been happening for years, with both Perry and Jakes deeply tied to the system that makes these abuses possible and protects those responsible. Every time conversation starts swirling around Diddy and all the questionable stuff he's allegedly done to artists, Tyler Perry's name almost always creeps into the mix like clockwork, and the more it happens, the harder it gets to ignore. When someone's name keeps coming up in those kinds of circles, it's not usually by accident. But here's where things take a turn. There's a rumor floating around that Tyler Perry might actually be answering to Diddy. Sounds wild, right? But what's even more surprising is who supposedly brought that into the light. Eddie Murphy. Now, Eddie doesn't usually insert himself into messy conversations. He stays quiet on industry politics for the most part. So when he does speak, people listen because he's not just talking to talk. Recently, Eddie started pulling back the curtain on some uncomfortable truths about how Hollywood operates, especially when it comes to black artists. He pointed out how the system has been designed to keep black actors isolated, not physically, but strategically. Hollywood thrives on division, and Eddie made it clear that this separation isn't just coincidental, it's intentional. He didn't name names, but let's be real, that implications were heavy. And for someone who's been in the game as long as he has, he knows where the bodies are buried. What's even more telling is that, for all their influence, Eddie Murphy and Tyler Perry have never worked together, not even once. Think about that. Two of the most powerful black figures in entertainment, and not a single collaboration. That's not just strange, it's suspect. It speaks to something deeper, a system that discourages unity among black creatives, or maybe even something more personal. Behind the scenes, there's this fear, maybe rooted in control, maybe ego, maybe survival, that teaming up could somehow shake the foundations of what each of them has built. But that fear doesn't just appear out of nowhere, it's put there. Eddie's comments start to make even more sense when you look at his recent work. The man's been in over 50 projects in 5 years, but only a handful of them were directed by black filmmakers. That says a lot about the system, about who gets access, and maybe about who's keeping who at arm's length. So yeah, maybe Eddie hasn't called anyone out directly, but the way he's been talking lately, it sounds like he's seen what's going on with Tyler Perry, and he's choosing his words carefully. But he's definitely saying something, because sometimes what's not said tells you everything you need to know. You ever notice how we've never really seen Will Smith and Denzel Washington team up the way Al Pacino and Robert De Niro have over the years? It's almost like there's this unspoken barrier stopping some of the biggest black names in Hollywood from sharing the screen. And it's not for lack of talent, audience demand, or opportunity. It feels more like there's something baked into the system that keeps these collaborations from happening. And yeah, maybe it is wise that these icons keep a distance sometimes, especially if they're still navigating the power structures around them. But when you step back, it becomes clear we're being robbed of some potentially game-changing creative partnerships, not just for entertainment's sake, but for cultural impact. This same dynamic shows up in the mystery around Tyler Perry and Eddie Murphy never working together. On paper, it doesn't make sense. Both are massive forces in entertainment, influential and culturally relevant, and yet nothing, no crossover, no joint projects. Why? It's because Eddie has always known about the exploitation and manipulation tactics by Perry, and he doesn't want to be a part of it. Black comedic brilliance as a whole has been undervalued and overlooked. Much of it is because of moguls like Perry who don't think twice before sacrificing young talent for the sake of their own success. Tyler Perry's rise from homeless playwright to entertainment mogul is undeniably inspiring, but there's a more complicated story underneath the glossy headlines and box office success. But in just a few months, it all unraveled. Lawsuits began piling up, alleging everything from physical abuse to rape and even trafficking. A federal investigation followed, and soon after, reports surfaced that Homeland Security had raided multiple Diddy properties, with sources saying the transnational organized crime division is involved. One of the most talked about suits going to trial came from Cassie, the R&B singer who was in a long-term relationship with Diddy. The lawsuit alleged years of abuse, control, and violence. And though the case was settled just one day after being filed, the damage was already done. It opened the floodgates, with multiple others stepping forward, and rumors now swirling that even Jennifer Lopez, another ex, may be preparing to speak about her past experiences with him. And here's where things get even murkier as this web of allegations grows. People are starting to look at the industry connections, who's protected whom, who stayed quiet, and who might be operating behind the scenes with similar patterns of control. Which brings us back to Eddie Murphy. Eddie has never been the loudest whistleblower, but he's smart, strategic, and he's been around long enough to recognize the patterns. In recent years, he's been hinting at the toxic culture within Black Hollywood, not just the racism from outside, but the manipulation and power games from within. And he's been careful, but clear. Certain moguls are not who they seem to be. It's not just about Diddy. Names like Tyler Perry keep surfacing twist in conversations about control, exploitation, and how certain stories and roles get greenlit, or don single quotes too. And when people like Eddie start speaking about division being weaponized in the black creative space, or how actors are being taught to compete instead of unite, you start to realize he's pulling the thread on something much bigger. The recent investigations into Diddy have cracked open the public's awareness of how money, fame, and silence are traded in Hollywood's upper circles. And now people are wondering if Diddy's being exposed. Who else is next? Who else has been using their influence to maintain a carefully curated image, while keeping others in their orbit afraid to speak? Eddie's been around long enough to know the truth, and now he's done keeping it quiet, because this isn't just about one man, it's about a system. And it looks like the curtain is finally starting to fall in recent months. Eddie Murphy's quiet revelations have begun connecting dots that many in the industry have either ignored, or been too afraid to say out loud. One of the most surprising names that's come up, Bishop T.D. Jakes. Once seen purely as a spiritual leader, now rumored to be tied in with powerful entertainment figures like Tyler Perry and Sean Diddy Combs. According to Eddie, Jakes wasn't just standing next to these moguls for prayer and press photos. Initially it made sense. A respected pastor by their side helped soften their public image. With Perry's work facing constant criticism for reinforcing stereotypes, and Diddy's name already buzzing with rumors, Jakes gave them cover. Was the good man in the circle, therefore damage control, the spiritual validation. But over time, it seems Jakes wasn't just there to clean up messes. He became part of them. Multiple sources, including Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, have spoken out about what really went down at those private parties. The ones that weren't on Instagram or the red carpet. Gene has described scenes that go far beyond typical celebrity nightlife. According to him, Jakes wasn't just present, he was active. He alleges that T.D. Jakes was a familiar face at some of Diddy's events, and may have been involved in much more than preaching.